That's a good number. Nice, wholesome number.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. That's a good number. Nice, wholesome number. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, that should be good. I think that will be good. I just want to double check. Oh yeah, here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Dr. Charlie Cropley. Charlie's a friend of mine and really an inspiration for NDs for Truth. We were discussing many months ago this sort of necessity to have naturopathic doctors having good dialogues. Charlie is masterful at compassionate discussion and really embodies the kind of heart that we need to have important discussions, difficult discussions, but also with compassion, even when we disagree with each other. We can all learn from Charlie and how he discusses things. I've seen it at work. It's very effective. And certainly I've gotten a lot out of it. It's an honor to have you, Dr. Charlie. You certainly are an elder in the real sense of your experience. It's not apparent because you're like super buffed and everything, which is really awesome. You really embody that beautifully. So it's an honor to have you. And I'm just going to share a little bit of your bio for the listeners. It's also on the website. Dr. Charlie Cropley graduated from National College of Naturopathic Medicine in 1979. He has been a practicing naturopathic doctor, teacher, and author in Boulder and Denver area for the last 35 years. Dr. Charlie has trained hundreds of doctors and patients in his methods of eating, moving, thinking, and authentic relating, the four pillars that lead to optimal health and self-healing. He is the author of numerous articles, books, and courses in the art of healing and natural medicine. Dr. Cropley is a frequent guest lecturer at the colleges of naturopathic and integrative medicine. He is widely regarded as one of today's leading thinkers and teachers in the philosophy and practice of self-healing. So welcome, Dr. Charlie Cropley. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here, Moshe.
Yeah, this is long in the coming. Ever since I started this several months ago, you've been on I keep bumping you to the next person. You know, you're on deck until I know that you went through some big changes. You moved your clinic, and so there's been a lot of change for you, and I hope that's going well.
Very well. Yes.
Yeah, and Charlie, you and I would say that there are others, but I know that in the Naturopathic Medicine Institute, you and I are some of the mind-body people, the people that emphasize the importance of the mental and emotional in physical and overall well-being.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you integrate that into your practice, of course.
Yeah, that is my practice.
Yeah.
There is no other practice without that for me.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. It's so nice to connect with you on these levels. I know that you and I are very passionate about this. I'll use my words here. These are my words. The somewhat dire circumstances that we're facing in the COVID crisis. And I know that you have a lot to say about this, Doc. So would you want to just kind of launch into it, or what do you feel?
Yeah, I would. I would first like to go back. You spoke of that you and I are avid in teaching, we'll say, mind-body practices, right? But much more. And I'd like to give our listeners a little history of myself so that they have that as an understanding. Uh, so I graduated in 1979. That's now 41 years ago. I came to Boulder, Colorado. I began a practice as an eclectic naturopathic doctor doing primary medicine, primary care naturopathic medicine, right? I delivered my own 2 children. And so I did primary care using homeopathic medicines, herbal medicines, physical medicine, acupuncture, hydrotherapy, nutrition, counseling, laboratory tests, pap smears, GYN exams, physical exams, you know, being a general practitioner. Did that for about 20 years, I would say. And from day one, I began educating my patients and began courses and classes that I would offer for my patients. And steadily over the years, because it's my passion, became more and more and more interested in educating my patients and less interested in using even naturopathic therapeutics, natural non-harmful remedies and therapeutics. And at a point, I let go my whole pharmacy and have focused increasingly on just education. And for probably the last 15 years, I would say, something like that, I've done exclusively education, rarely bringing in, you know, maybe suggesting an herb now and then, but it's a rarity. And so my focus has become this, and I look at the behavioral causes of disease. I work primarily with chronic degenerative disease. And as you know, as a naturopathic doctor, when you're working with chronic disease, you then also deal with the acute illnesses that arise in the healing of chronic diseases, because our patients develop acute illnesses that need to be properly handled. So I deal with both acute and chronic illnesses. And I look at the behavioral basis of illness. And behavior, of course, is not the only cause of illness, but I see it to be the major cause of illness. There's infectious causes, there are genetic causes, there are other causes. And I work with 4 particular behaviors. I investigate people's eating, and I've done extensive nutrition with every patient I've seen for a long time, and I do individualized eating regimens and also fasting. I teach almost every patient how to fast, and also teach them how to discover their own food sensitivity. So eating is one of the behaviors. The second behavior is movement. What movement means is, yes, it means, do our patients work out on a regular basis? That's one, but more than that, I emphasize in movement, I emphasize very strongly breathing and forms of, well, I emphasize breathing, and particularly for my patients who are very anxious, but really for all patients, I teach them to breathe, and I also teach them posturing, to inhabit their bodies in a way that that their bodies are relaxed and opened and connected to the ground. And these are in addition to actually teaching them, especially if they're injured, how to move therapeutically for their injury. And the third area, after eating and movement, the third area is what we could call mind body or mental emotional, psycho spiritual. And that, I think, speaks for itself. Yeah, so I'll just say I work strongly with that, with various ways of counseling. And the last that I work with is the skill of relating. And relating encompasses, you could say, relationship is everything. We're related to food. What is our relationship with our own selves, with our own body, with our mind? What is our relationship with desire? But mostly in relating and community, I'm looking at our relationship with other people, which may be our spouse, maybe our children. It's also our relationship to our career and to finances. I include under relating, and in a more general sense, our comfort in our relationship with the generalized others, them. What are they going to think about me? And our self-image and wanting to be liked, wanting to be appreciated, or and which is just fundamental, right? Our need, that is as fundamental as air. And so helping people to see the stress that they live with in relationship, and also the power that relationship and community is in their healing. So that's what I work with. And I do private work. I do support groups. I do retreats. I do online classes. I do a lot of different things with that. And so as you and I now start talking about COVID, I wanted our listeners to understand and see that while I value medicines, both conventional medicines and natural naturopathic medicines, I value the use of medicines very, very much. To know that in this discussion, I would like to focus on what we can do for ourselves in those areas, and what is the already existent state of our country with regard to eating, movement, thinking, and relating.
That's a good topic. Yeah. Definitely a good topic. Thanks, Charlie. That's a great, it's great to actually get to know how you practice and where your approach lies. It's helpful, especially as we do go into, we could consider this an acute situation, but there are chronic elements to COVID on all these different levels. Certainly physically, nutrition plays a role. The drugs that people are on has definitely played a role with susceptibility and the severity of the symptoms. Also the mental, emotional aspects of the situation. There's lots to talk about of these topics.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I thought, as we discussed, it might be valuable to begin with my personal professional perspective on what's taking place with COVID, just an overview.
Yeah.
So
go for it.
Thank you. As a practicing naturopathic doctor, I have been in relationship with conventional medicine since day one. And in general, naturopathic medicine takes a very, and I mean this in a healthy sense, a very skeptical and critical look at conventional medicine. The two have forever been at odds, and the disagreement between us is fundamental. It is absolutely fundamental in that as naturopathic doctors, we practice according to principles. And I rely on these principles again and again and again with my patients. Medicine has no principles that guide it whatsoever.
Yes.
None whatsoever. Anything that destroys symptoms is fair for consideration, right? And they do not have an understanding of the causes of disease. That their approach to disease is a very circular one. I was looking at a woman who came to me who was suffering with severe vertigo, and she says it was diagnosed as Meniere's disease. Well, Meniere's disease is basically vertigo that is hypothesized to be caused by a middle ear infection that nobody can find.
Yeah.
So you're dizzy because you have Meniere's disease. What's Meniere's disease? It's dizziness. You know,
right.
It's what's causing this lump on my breast? Cancer. What is cancer? Cancer is when you develop tumors on your breast. Okay.
Right. The disease
Yeah.
is the symptom. The disease is the
Yeah.
symptom.
Yeah.
And if you remove the symptoms, Hahnemann talked about this. If the practitioners of the old school medicine believe that if they remove the symptom, they had adequately removed the whole disease.
Yeah. Suppress the fever. It's gone.
Yeah.
Now, the next morning you have a diarrhea or a skin rash, right? But then we deal with that. I wonder where that came from.
Right.
Let's suppress that. We can suppress that too. So the point being that we are principle driven, and the point I'm making is that I have viewed with a strong skepticism and a healthy skepticism what takes place in medicine. So prior to COVID, we go back 5 years, we could go back any amount of time. Prior to COVID, we have a medical, pharmaceutical, insurance institutions, industries, right?
Yes.
And those industries and other industries are all connected. They're all connected. So
Yeah.
if we begin with our soil and our food, we see that we have an agricultural industry that uses toxic pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, the latest being glyphosate,
Yeah.
on crops, which has decimated our topsoil, decimated the biome of the soil, and as well as that of the water. And this industry, along with others, but just taking this industry, is a major contributor to the poisoning of our soil, our water, and our air, and also to the poisoning of human beings. Glyphosate is now found in the urine of every human being on the planet. And that's our agricultural industry. This industry is touted to be the pinnacle of agricultural science,
Right.
as we now understand it, right? So all the science supports this poisoning, right?
Good point. of course, it makes me think, I'm sure you're going to make the point yourself, but it makes me think how medicine is touted to be the pinnacle of science for our health.
Of course it is. Yes, we moved from agriculture to into the food industry itself, and in the food industry, to take a potato and make it into barbecued potato chips, and to serve that with a cola drink, is science backs that this is human food.
Right.
Right? And our government, our Food and Drug Administration, signs off on these being consumed by Americans, and actually has repressed and continues to be a barrier against reams of well-documented studies and evidence to the contrary, and documenting the harm of this to Americans.
Yeah,
So we
and
have,
on that light, if I might add, if you look at what the FDA seems more concerned about controlling, it's those things that could be very, very helpful for people. Like some of the supplements and the extracts and even homeopathic medicines have gone through a hard time with the FDA. But yet, as you say, like the issue there is unmistakable when you really look at it.
that's right. That's right. And we're talking about the already existent prior to COVID state of the institutions in our United States. We go from our food and our water and our air from agriculture into then health. And in medicine, medicine then likewise, medicine it does not at all address environmental poisoning and the effects of food on health, as we know.
Right.
They search for diseases. And when they name a disease like high blood pressure, then you've got high blood pressure. Right? What's
That's
hypertension? Hypertension's when your blood pressure is high.
Yeah.
What's making my blood pressure high? Hypertension.
Yeah. There's that
Yeah.
circular issue again.
Yes. Yes. So
Yeah.
now the health in the United States is the worst in the industrialized world. We rank between 34th and 39th in various parameters of health. We also spend more on health than any country on earth per capita. And our incidence of disease, as I say, we could simply take cancer, but we could take diabetes, we could take heart disease,
Yeah.
we could take autoimmune conditions, we could take the rising incidences of autism, of depression and anxiety. The health of Americans is the worst in the industrialized world.
And they're also the most drugged.
Absolutely. The level of prescription medicines that Americans take and the cost of it.
Yeah.
So with nothing coming from medicine, from conventional medicine, about the effects of food and the agriculture, and the poisoning, the environmental poisoning on our health. Then we have all of this. Excuse me. So if we take, you could take any of the chronic degenerative diseases, but if we look at cancer, for example, Americans are terrified of cancer. When they go to a doctor, to hear the words, "you have cancer," or "this might be cancer," which you hear with just about everything. Well, it could be a tumor, right? So strikes terror into patients. And what is it now? 1 in 3 women will have cancer in their lifetime. And so the point that I'm making is that amid the epidemic of cancer, let alone diabetes, obesity, and heart disease, and others, just focusing on cancer, epidemic in proportions, we have the media telling us, very similarly to COVID, touting regularly scientific discoveries that hopefully are going to put an end to cancer.
Yeah.
I think Richard Nixon began the war on cancer. And ever since that time, which was what, the 1970s, we have the cancer incidents just continue to rise and continue to rise.
Yeah.
This then is the incompetency, just incompetency, the obvious ignorance and the destruction that is taking place in our medical system. What I'm pointing out is this is the same thinking that is governing COVID.
Yes.
Now, so we have the medical system, we have our media that tells us, probably tells us we're the healthiest country in the world, right? That we have the best medical system, and that a cure for cancer is just around the corner, and you just wait, it's coming up, right? And further, we have a system of science that tells us that all this is backed by science, that the way we're practicing medicine claims they're scientifically backed,
Mm-hmm.
or that there is evidence for what they're doing.
Yes.
What kind of science is that?
Yes.
A science that allows our world to be polluted, our crops to be turned into dead, lifeless foods, that fails to address those as causes, that then gives us pharmaceuticals that create side effects, and is completely a failure at preserving our health. That's the science.
Yeah.
And we are being told that it is scientific and that this is all really true and that we're doing good work.
Absolutely.
That's what our media is telling us.
You
so it's this then is the background that I, as a naturopathic doctor, look at and say, now, you think that I don't believe you about any of this. I can see the falseness of all of this. And when you roll out this pandemic, you think I'm going to go to listen to you without a very skeptical eye? So from there, that's where I want to start, is this whole system
Yes.
is so corrupt.
It's so corrupt. And our colleague, our peer, Dr. Rick Kirschner, has made an amazing video that really looks at the history of some of these terms like scientific and unscientific. This was made up by the American Medical Association with their anti-competition smear campaign to make any other aspect of medicine look illegitimate, and like they had the only the authority on what was scientific and proper medicine. So it's really a worthy video to check out if you haven't seen it. It's called From Healthcare to Sick Care, Rick Kirschner. So I'm just really supporting everything you're saying here, Charlie. I agree with you that it's the more you look at it, the more that you unglue yourself from the mainstream media, and including social media, including television, news and stuff, the more obvious the corruption becomes. You can't ignore it. It's infuriatingly obvious.
That's right. And almost all Americans recognize it. Maybe not as much with medicine, but certainly the corruption of our government is quite obvious to everyone.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
So then,
And more people are waking up to corruption on in all the different ways, like I'm going to use a word that's used elsewhere, but there's an intersectionality between the pharmaceutical and the agricultural and the medical and the military industrial and the petrochemical. They're all in the same bag together and have this sort of unified agenda, which is
yes,
money and control.
yes, yep, agreed. Yes. All right. So we come to COVID,
Yes.
and we begin with, first of all, what we know about COVID has been brought to us through the media, right? And presumably has come through largely the medical system, right? Has driven the government.
Yes.
Our epidemiologists, began and said, there's an outbreak in Wuhan. This is what's happening, tracking the spread of it. And there has been a campaign of fear, and that the American mind has been well prepared for, because the American mind already believes that what causes their sickness is not poor food, right? Is not polluted air, is not the amount of stress that they have, and so on, but that what causes their illness is diseases.
Yeah.
So it's a simple shift to say, we have a virus that escaped a lab in Wuhan and seems to be spreading around the globe.
Yes.
And this virus is terrifying, just as cancer is terrifying.
Yes.
And people are primed, and then it is fear-mongering, just keeps being built. More and more reasons to be terrified. Hospitals are being overwhelmed. We hear that this may be affecting children in some places. There may be a new form of it that's affecting children.
Right.
It seems that it may be transmitted by asymptomatic people. Now, that's never happened with any contagious illness before, but it appears that COVID may be doing that, meaning you have no idea where it's coming from.
And I just want to make a quick point on that. The CDC, the World Health Organization definitely was spreading this. And they spread these ideas that asymptomatic people can spread it. So you got to stay at home. Otherwise, you are contributing to the death of others. But then later, they retract these statements with a more balanced statement saying that it's very rare for an asymptomatic person to be carrying it. It's very rare, but the damage is already done, because the fear is like, like those sticky fly trap things that you hang from. The fly is already stuck to the sticky fear tape, and so it's afraid that it's going to go around and spread the disease. Okay, go on. So keep going, Charlie. Doc.
Okay. So we have the media fear-mongering.
Yeah.
And not only the media, trusted epidemiologists, virologists, doctors advising the president and the government, and news from the CDC, the World Health Organization, NIH, all of these together that are have us terrified, rightly terrified of this virus, and also saying there is absolutely nothing that can be done. Washing your hands, highly beneficial. Masking, highly beneficial. Social distancing, and then to the point of locking down entire nations
Yeah.
and locking them down. And with reports of now talking about a second wave of who knows how long this will continue. It keeps mutating, growing worse, and hopefully we will be able to have a vaccine.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's nothing that can be done. So
right.
So this has been, I'm not saying anything that isn't just, we all have been experiencing this for the past 6+ months.
Yeah.
So let's look at it from the side of naturopathic medicine and us as clinicians and naturopathic medicine in the era of COVID.
Sure. Give me just a quick sec. I want to address something you said, because you had mentioned that all of these, like before we spoke, you had mentioned that all of these systems, the medical and the agricultural and the pharmaceutical, their bottom line is not integrity. It's not true science. It's money. It's making money. So there can't be a solution, because they're trying to push us all towards the vaccine as being the only solution. That's, again, you follow the money, right? So many things is about following the money. If
Yes.
some of these countries where you would expect the death to be much, much greater because of the density of the population, they're not, because they're allowing their medical doctors, they're not so influenced by the corrupt system that we're talking about. There's corruption, but it's not so influenced. The doctors can make decisions more in their own conscience and say, okay, for instance, in Taiwan and in India, they're using hydroxychloroquine, for instance. They have access to that. They're using inhaled corticosteroids. Now, as naturopathic doctors, we wouldn't choose this, but it's a darn right better solution to save a person's life than to put them on a respirator and kill them, or just say that the only thing we could do is socially distance and give you the vaccine. So
Yes.
the death rates have been really down, which just emphasizes again that the whole idea here that these experts know what they're talking about is just completely incorrect.
That's right.
Yeah.
Incorrect, not science-based, and harmful.
Yes.
Harmful to people. So
yes.
Just within the medical perspective, are you aware of America's frontline doctors?
I very much am. I'm a big fan of them. I just saw a
Right?
wonderful show. Well, it was an hour talk by Dr. Simone Gold.
Yes, she's the founder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. The American, formerly Nigerian doctor who was very passionately speaking about hydroxychloroquine, and the media just took her and tore her to bits. We're trying to make fun of her for some of her beliefs. She does different things that are not as commonplace, you'd say, as amongst medical doctors in North America. But she's a brilliant woman. I saw Candace Owens interview her, and she's passionate. She's spot on. So yeah, I'm familiar. Definitely, I love those people. Very much love for them in these times. Like people standing up and being truthful. It's fantastic.
Yes, and there are they have done a series of seminars, of all-day seminars on various aspects of COVID. And one of the things that they advocate is the use of hydroxychloroquine.
Yes.
And they had a doctor in describing his success in it was a number of clinics that he oversees in his state, with their success rates with hydroxychloroquine Z-Paks and zinc
Right.
in using it in the senior inpatient centers where you're getting the sickest of sick people, and their
Yeah.
success rates were amazing. Now
Amazing.
we're MDs, but the point is that, and hydroxychloroquine has been in use, I want to say 40 years, maybe it's longer than
70.
that.
I heard 70 years by some doctors.
That's more likely, yes.
Yeah.
Been used around the world. It is absolutely safe for children, for pregnant women. It is well used, and Dr. Simone Gold prescribed hydroxychloroquine to her patients in the hospital and lost her job.
Yeah. I know,
Right?
it's horrendous. It's a horrendous reality that it's
Yes.
yeah, we all ought to be waking up to the very, sinister nature of what we're facing, what we're experiencing.
Yes. Yes. Which is what we're talking about here. So
Yeah.
in our naturopathic perspective, we have, which includes the intelligent use of pharmaceutical medicines, usually more as a last resort than a first resort, because
Right.
we have such a powerful therapeutic armamentarium ourselves. But that is being actively suppressed, and
Yes.
reputations ruined over at a time when medicine offers, once again, nothing
Nothing.
whatsoever.
Zilch.
Zero. Intubation they used to offer, but they finally backed off on that, thank God.
And
So nothing.
Dr. Cropley, on this website, ndsfortruth.com, in the latest articles, I put up an article about the Lancet article that it's been quoted to
Yeah.
delegitimize hydroxychloroquine. It's been retracted because it is so fraudulent.
Yes. Isn't that something?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
appreciate what you're saying. Like normally we wouldn't be like getting all excited about a pharmaceutical solution like this. But given the circumstances, the lockdowns, the killing of the economy, the increase in societal ills and suicide, et cetera, don't you think it's a way better thing that we can promote something that people can wrap their minds around simply? There's this drug called hydroxychloroquine. It's been around for 7 years, very safe, very cheap. It offers a much better solution than what's being offered by the conventional media and everything and the system.
And so moving closer to naturopathic medicine.
Yeah.
Do you know what the number one predictor or correlator of COVID infection and mortality?
Is it vitamin D?
It is vitamin D status. Exactly.
Yeah, vitamin D levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, for our listeners, if you go to, I think that Joe Mercola has put out really some excellent information on vitamin D. He and a number of other credible researchers. So vitamin D, right off the bat, the number one best thing that you can do to prevent COVID and perhaps to treat it is to take a regular supplement of vitamin D. My personal recommendation is cod liver oil as a source for it, but
or the sun. If you got the sun, get out in the sun for 20
how
minutes.
about the sun, right? Yeah.
We sometimes forget the sun, like where we are right now. I think you have winter there too, right? Where you are?
I think we do, yes.
We don't get enough vitamin D during our winter by any means. But there are some parts of the world where people can still benefit from sun. So get out there and soak the rays. That's a good way.
You bet.
Yeah.
All right. One of the principles of naturopathic medicine is treat the patient, not the disease.
Yes.
Which means if a COVID patient comes to me, that I'm looking at the patient themselves rather than rather than focusing on, gosh, what can I do to destroy the virus?
Yeah.
You know, they have, or there's nothing I can do for the virus, so there's nothing I can do. It's the opposite as a naturopathic doctor. The virus is fine. If there were a way to destroy the virus, then fine, I'd be open to that. There's not. Look at my patient. So both, if we start preventatively with our patient and look at the way they eat,
Yeah.
their exercise,
Yeah.
particularly breathing, right? Their
Yeah.
mental, emotional patterns of stress, and the
Yeah.
quality of their relationships, we find a wealth that our patients can do for themselves.
Yes.
So, for example, let's say that if we are preventing illness by strengthening immunity,
Yes.
each one of these behaviors is well evidenced for its influence on the immune system, right?
Yeah.
It's nutrition, mental, emotional stress, exercise, meditation, the healing power of society and intimate relationships, well documented
Yes.
things that we can be doing for prevention.
Yeah.
If that we're talking on an individual level. If a patient comes to a naturopathic doctor and they have an upper respiratory infection with the possibility of it going into pneumonia, what do we have that we can do for them? We have
Tons of stuff.
we begin with an anti-inflammatory diet, modified fasting, which our listeners may not understand, but the power of these tools is as certain and powerful as to say exercise builds strength and endurance.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So in exercise, then what do we do? Or in movement? The answer is I'll say a little more about this, but fresh air and breathing is paramount.
Yeah.
And in the 1918 epidemics of the Spanish flu, there are I have records. You can go to Wikipedia. You can Google this of the fresh air clinics that were implemented. Some of them during and following World War I, and then others due to the Spanish flu epidemic. And the level of prevention of death from pneumonia and the overall healing of wounds, Moshe, it was at such a high level, such an improvement by having outdoor fresh air clinics that I believe it was up above 80% improvement in overall healing that took place. So that's
amazing. Just from that one factor of air,
yes.
just let's say some very afraid people, the people that you can tell they're afraid when you walk near a person because they're going like this, when you're getting close, you can see that they're just living in fear, and they're looking at you if your mask isn't on right, and they're like really scared. So if they were listening, just what you said just now ought to lift some of this fear, because these things are very effective. Now, I just want to address something that unfortunately the fear has penetrated very deeply, and the brainwashing. So a lot of people might dismiss these things as unscientific, as pseudoscientific. The cultural brainwashing has been pretty elaborate for those people who are quite afraid. Unfortunately, even in our own profession, there are naturopathic doctors who wouldn't do what you're suggesting to do. They wouldn't recommend this. They would suggest the vaccination as being the solution. Even some of the top homeopathic naturopathic doctors that exist in our society are pushing for the vaccine, and not mentioning all the other things that we have to offer people. It's a very strange time that we're living in. Very strange.
Yes, yes, it is. Um, yeah, and some some among us are deeply frozen in fear. It is, and it's difficult to dispel that fear. It takes a good deal of education to do so,
Yes.
and I hope for them that 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 education reaches them, and that the censorship of this valuable education ceases.
Yes.
I'd like to speak of some other just uh, uh,
Other
just
modalities like
yes,
hydrotherapy.
yes, and even before hydrotherapy, the is sleep.
Right.
As you know, when a patient, when their ability to sleep becomes compromised, when they develop insomnia, their health quickly unravels.
Yes.
For myself, if on the nights when I have a poor night's sleep, it is much more difficult for me to eat well. My cravings are gnawing at me all day long,
Well,
right? I,
the emotions come up because that the conscious mind becomes a little bit friable, a little bit weakened, and so our subconscious patterns will start rising to the surface when we've lost sleep or when we're under a lot of stress as well, another condition.
yes, yeah, I become terribly irritable and anxious, and I'm most irritable with my own self. My self-critic just rages on me when I'm sleep deprived, and
Hmm.
my anxiety, I I am weaker in every way.
Yeah.
So I experience that then emotionally and mentally. I also experience it with my workouts. I don't want to work out as much.
Yeah.
I lose my temper. It's the effect of not sleeping. I believe is the most harmful of anything. So, my God, if we had a campaign that said we we want Americans to get to bed at a good hour and allow yourself plenty of sleep, and put this in place and encourage it, sleeping. How about having a bowel movement every day?
That's a good idea. And
Right?
how about turning off the Wi-Fi and your cellular signals while you're sleeping so you could go into a deep REM sleep and lay off the coffee. That might help too.
There we go, right? And then we could go, and then there's vitamin D supplements, vitamin A supplements, zinc supplements, a variety of herbs, echinacea and others that people could be using.
Yeah,
But just in our lives, having people go out and breathe fresh air,
right.
right? If you're infected, it is antiviral, the
Yeah.
great antiviral. Be out in the sun, open your house up as much as you can, and have fresh air be in the home.
And here's
Men,
another one before hydrotherapy. We haven't even got to hydrotherapy yet, which is a beautiful, founding element of our medicine.
yes,
Is fear is optional. The idea of fear, like you talked about it, what effect does fear have on, first of all, the power of the manifestation of the mind to be very afraid will accelerate whatever you're afraid of. But then there's also the suppression of the immune system by fear itself. So fear is optional. That could be a simple, somebody could give a lecture and broadcast it about how not to choose fear and how to see all these alternatives and to focus on that and let that augment in your mind. That's a big one
yes,
too.
that's a huge one.
Yeah.
How about circulation and regular exercise?
Yeah.
Again, a national campaign to begin regular daily exercise as your responsibility as an American to defend us against COVID. Go out and exercise until you break a sweat.
Right.
And then getting into naturopathic medicine, come back in and step into a cool shower, right? That I won't go into all the effects of that,
Right.
but a cool shower followed by a vigorous towel drying. These are elements that you and I understand very well because we use them ourselves. We use them with patients. But most Americans, this sounds like, what's that got to do with a virus?
Right.
Right. And again, it's the mentality of a virus. I don't get the connection. The connection is our body. The connection is vitalizing our immunity.
I love how you're
circulation has everything to do with that.
I love how simple these solutions are and how completely inexpensive. I mean, a lot of them are absolutely free. Air, exercise, a towel.
Yeah.
Ideally, everybody has a towel to vigorously stimulate their lymphatics and everything. Right? Like these are simple solutions, and I appreciate simplicity. I really, really do. I think that the greatest things in life are very simple.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
There has always been a culture of health, of human beings who were themselves vibrantly healthy and understood the principles and practices of health. Naturopathic medicine is one such tradition. This tradition existed among indigenous peoples, existed among the Indian, as in the Indian culture, among the Chinese, the Orientals, all have these traditions, and they are all founded on what is available to us now. Basically, eating, moving, thinking, and relating.
Yeah.
Right? That was how living a virtuous life, a life that is deliberately devoted to building healing, to building strength, to building vitality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
Versus
and that is available to us today. It is never going to change. Those are the foundations of health. We may have additional things like hydroxychloroquine that we could add in at points, but other things to contribute. But the ancient ways are unchanging forever.
Right.
This is how human beings, this is how you build a healthy, happy human being.
Yeah.
And if you go to a medical doctor and ask a medical doctor that,
for the large part, you're not going to get
nothing.
that. You're not going to get that
right.
for the large part.
That's
I think there are some medical doctors that are
of course.
yeah, you know, they're
Yeah,
seeing more sense and they're not handcuffed. Unfortunately, the system handcuffs their doctors. So if doctors start making suggestions like this, they're going to be kicked out. Their license are going to be revoked. If they're making suggestions that you can take vitamin D to build your immune system, they're going to get in trouble and lose their license to practice medicine. This is how corrupt the system is. It's terrible.
That's right. Do you know of Dr. Paul Lewis in Washington or Oregon? Do you know
No,
of him?
I don't.
Dr. Paul Lewis is a pediatrician with an enormous practice. And for the last, I'll say 12 years, he has been doing a study in his practice along with another, not a doctor, but more of a researcher, we'll say, who structured the study. And what they studied was the difference in health outcomes between vaccinated children and unvaccinated or less vaccinated children.
Yeah.
He showed unequivocal differences in allergies, in asthma, in ADHD, and other things.
Autoimmune.
He published his studies. I could call up the name of the journal now. He published his studies in a reputable journal as of I believe it was November of 2020, right? And the State Board of Medical Examiners canceled his license. He was barred from the practice of medicine. This is, and this, you listen to this man and the two men who did this study. This is a man who is a doctor dedicated to his patient, as kind as can be, and who wanted to know and took it on himself to let me then explore this and get some data on it. And they published the data, and he is debarred.
So Charlie, what that shows me beyond a shadow of a doubt is the system is not interested in health. The system is not scientific. They're not interested in evidence. There's some serious, people, I've said this a few times with discussing with different naturopathic doctors, but people have a hard time getting past the idea that those authorities that we look up to don't have our backs.
That's very hard time. Yeah.
That's the red pill to swallow. That's the difficult pill to swallow. Once you get past that, once you shed a few tears, you feel frustrated, you rage your fists against the sky or whatever you want to do, then you could start to see, you start connecting a lot of dots and you start to see how deeply corrupt, right to the core of reality this system is. And unfortunately, we've all, well, I don't want to say we've all, because certainly naturopathic doctors and other healthcare practitioners that don't fall into the conventional model are not, and lots of the public are not falling into this trap. But the majority, and certainly we see that with the majority. So that's just horrible. I don't know if you're aware, but in the College of Naturopathic Physicians of British Columbia has forbade naturopathic doctors from telling their patients or marketing in any way or saying that vaccines can cause injury, that their children might be vaccine injured, that vaccines could be harmful in any way. They're not allowed. In Kono in Ontario, the College of Naturopaths of Ontario has forbade and made it outside the scope of practice for naturopaths to deal at all with COVID. That a naturopathic doctor in Ontario does not have the scope of practice to talk in any way to mention any of those things towards helping improve a person's outcome with COVID. None of those things. So even in our profession, in the regulatory bodies, in Canada at least, I know the AANP doesn't have a very impressive record with dealing with COVID either. We're seeing this corruption has entered into the naturopathic house.
Yes. And seemingly for the same reasons, of course, or at least the same rationale.
Yes.
In the case of naturopathic doctors, I believe there is a certain amount of it that is where some naturopathic doctors believe the truth of that, and then there is also the economic pressure that the loss of insurance coverage, perhaps, and other problems that naturopaths would be excluded from if they don't conform to the conventional regulatory agencies. It's very sad. It's very sad.
Very sad. I'm pretty idealistic about this, and I think that it's gotten kind of late into the game. But naturopaths, when people stand up for what's true and what's right, usually the outcome is positive. There could be a bit of a bumpy way, there could be some bumps along the way. and some certain privileges may be revoked, but ultimately the service to humanity is fulfilled, which we take in our oaths. You know, we're here to serve humanity, not just the preservation of our practice, let's say, or our the economic outcome of our practices or our profession. I think naturopathic medicine has had a very weak response in general to what we're seeing today.
I share with you. I don't like to focus particularly on the faults of others, and it's challenging for me to deal with my disappointment in the response of our profession. When I heard about COVID and could see it emerging, my response was, as a naturopathic doctor, our time has come.
Yeah.
This is where we shine.
Right.
Like, just bring it on here.
Yeah.
Naturopath, we are not going to be able to handle all the people coming to our clinics, and which is as it should be. And to find, to find that not be the response, my judgment and my ire has been strong, and I try to channel that into what I myself can do. And you're a good example of this, Moshe. Is you have brought forth this podcast and are bravely speaking the truth in the time when it's needed. And if I might elaborate a little, I think perhaps some of our colleagues in the profession, I know that many of them do not have the same training and understanding that we do. However, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, my life has been dedicated to this. I know how to prevent infection, that is to enhance immunity, reducing down the chances of infection, and how to care for people in all stages of their sickness. And I am an heir to and an elder in a tradition that holds the wisdom of healing. And I am given this wisdom for people.
Yes.
And at this time, this is what the people need.
Right.
For me to not make this available just for my own self, it's like it is. I could not live with myself.
Right.
You know, that this is what I prayed for. What I wanted was to learn how to heal. What heals? And I've studied this my entire life. I'm an elder. I cannot be invalidated, right? I know this.
Right.
Not that I don't have anything to learn, but I know, and I know that I carry a wisdom and principles and practices that make just a stunning difference in this situation.
Yes.
How could I not
Yes.
give it to people, right? And we come from, look, all our ancestors prior to my coming to school, every ND we knew had been jailed. We have always been at odds with the status quo in medicine, always.
Yes.
And we've always been the underdogs. We've always been um, uh, defamed, attacked, jailed, persecuted, licenses taken away. That's what you sign on for as a naturopathic doctor.
That's
That's
right.
what,
You are speaking deeply, deeply from the wisdom of the earth right now. Like you have me riveted, Dr. Charlie, and I'll tell you something. Your experience as an elder and your certainty, your lack of doubt in our ability to help people, that's the most valuable thing that you can impart, along with the information
that's right.
itself.
Right.
But that confidence in our medicine is so beautiful, to
Yeah.
inspire the students, to inspire other doctors and the public to trust in these alternatives in the medicine that we practice. I had Dr. Andre Sain on here, and it was the same. I was listening to him, and his confidence in his ability to help people is it's
Unshakable.
unsurmountable. You can't
Yeah.
take away his confidence, because he's
That's right.
seen it time and time and time again that the medicine works.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I have recognized that as an elder, but as a physician, that what my patients pay me for is my judgment. Now, and I have sat for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours with thousands and thousands and thousands of sick people, and I know something about sickness, right? I'm a good guy to have in your camp,
Yeah.
right? So you come to me for my judgment, and always it requires judgment. If it doesn't require judgment, fine, then it doesn't require judgment. But I have a woman who's entering her second trimester of pregnancy. She's been terribly sick through her first trimester. I've worked with her. We go and check her labs, and her progesterone level is 3 times the level that of a normal woman entering her second trimester, right? She is freaked out about this. Here's this lab test, and talk to one doctor and they say this, to another one, another. And we're in a territory. Does somebody know? Now, she has been taking progesterone. The progesterone has made an enormous difference in her symptomatology. She's concerned about adverse effects on the fetus. There's all these questions to be raised.
Yeah.
That's what I get paid for.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I get paid for. I've looked at this. Nobody knows what to do here, right?
Yeah.
You ask me, what you get is a man who spent 40 years working with this, using nutrition, naturopathic therapeutics, that says, my judgment is this.
Yes.
Right? I have a woman who's had diarrhea for 5 weeks now. And again, being different people telling her different things, she's at a loss for what to do. There's no set answer for what to do. I look in there. I've been working with diarrhea for 40 years.
Yeah.
I know what my methods are. I know what I don't know here, and I'm going to make a judgment on this. And there's not many people that can make a better judgment.
Right.
There are microbiologists, there are infectious disease specialists, there are people with, who can weigh in, and I listen to them. But in terms of judgment, that is.
You hold some big keys there. People don't realize this, but I've had a number of patients on 10 plus pharmaceutical drugs. So one doctor may have prescribed 2 of them, another doctor 1 of them. And by the end of all these specialists, they are on 10 different drugs. There are some moderate to severe interreactions amongst these drugs. Not one of those medical doctors is checking for these. I haven't seen medical doctors do these checks. They do their thing, and that's it. They send them on their way. we can also make these discerning calls and help them, consider, you might consider changing this or coming off this, or because those harmful interactions could be contributing, and very often are, to a great amount of their struggles when they come to see us.
Right? Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. It's, and so, yeah, and with experience, we gain experience with our therapies.
Yes.
That is, I know what the power is of a hydrotherapeutic practice, an abdominal pack in diarrhea, right?
Yeah.
I know the power of echinacea in infection.
Yeah.
I've been there, and it takes a long time to learn to understand your therapies.
I got a question for you. You know the placebo effect, and how how
Yeah.
how effective, how much influence do you think a doctor's confidence in what they're doing, how much does that affect the outcome?
Well, I can tell you this. I think it's very strong, and
Yeah.
the placebo effect is said to be about 30%, and that seems good to me. But I can tell you that um, my my clinical confidence has grown, so that I speak my confidence. I also speak my doubts, but
Sure.
uh, I speak with a confidence that I can tell when I'm saying it, the power of it.
Yes.
And I also can look at younger doctors, for example, and see that obviously they don't have the experience that I do, but they cannot speak with that confidence yet.
Right.
And I see the difference regularly.
Yeah,
And I want to,
if you step forward with a patient and your heart's open and you're confident this is going to help someone, the healing starts right there. The transfer of energy, and there's things going on beneath the surface at the level of the subconscious and in the mental level, that's very, very powerful when a practitioner such as yourself, who knows, who's confident, who really cares, those combination of things is so effective alone, not to mention all of the other, the actual healing that takes place from what you've suggested.
yes, yes, it is. I, as you're saying that, I'm aware that I feel that that everything that I do with patients and is founded upon my relationship with the patient. That if if the patient knows and can feel how much I care about them, and if the patient trusts me, and if we have, with, I will say with all my patients, I think we have honest conversations in which what they reveal to me, they haven't revealed to anybody before.
Right. Same with me.
And I know, yes. And
Yeah.
that builds an intimacy and a trust. And I am true to that trust. I'm not trying to really get my patient to do something. I tell them my confidence in something that I have for them to do. And I also, like in the case of this woman with the progesterone, will say, will acknowledge that We don't know what to do here. These are the risks. This is what I think will happen and why. This is what I don't know. This is what could go wrong. And if it were me, this is what I do.
Yeah.
So it's not simply me trying to move the patient into something. It's really a well-reasoned rationale for this. Examining it carefully, and patients respond to that like, you know, damn, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And they should. Or there's times that they don't, you know, that they choose something else. Okay.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
Awesome. This is so great. I want to ask you, if you were like, what do you think we should do as a profession today? What do you think? Like, I give you a magic wand. I give you a magic wand, all right? You are now the genie of naturopathic medicine. And on any level, what would you like to see happen in our profession today?
Oh my goodness. I don't know that I can answer that, Moshe, because you know, our profession is so diverse.
Yes.
And there really is more. I don't want to call. I guess we could call it diversity, but
there's also division. You know, that's another word.
Yes, yes. It's not like a healthy diversity. There's strong division and
yes.
conflict and disagreement. Now, granted, there always has been, but it seems wider than ever before. And so I imagine, you know, if I were to do what you say, and if I could wave a wand, waving that wand would involve changing the way a whole lot of naturopathic physicians think.
Yeah.
And I can't, you know, that's another
No, you
word.
can't do that. You can't.
Yeah,
But for example, I'll give you an example of one thing that would make sense is to really emphasize the importance of elders in teaching at the colleges.
Oh God.
I was happy to see you have some access to teaching at the naturopathic colleges, but there's been a phenomenon of elders being booted out of the door over the last 10, 15 years.
Yes, yes. It's interesting. I had a conversation with it was a person who was on the I want to say the board of directors, and I don't know if that's the right title, who make the decisions about one of our colleges. And I was discussing with him the absence of elders in the colleges.
Yeah.
And he said yes, he acknowledged that, but they just don't have the money in the budget to be able to pay an elder to come in and do that. And in our conversation, what we spoke of was that the elders are the living expression of naturopathic medicine.
Yes.
They are the carriers of this tradition. They actually define what naturopathic medicine is.
Yes.
Right. They're the ones who know how it works. And
right.
And so if you have a school and it's thriving with graduates and you're teaching what you're teaching, that is not necessarily naturopathic medicine.
Right.
Even if you call it that, because the person who is most qualified to go, that's naturopathic medicine, is an elder of naturopathic medicine.
Because they've been practicing and they've seen it work. They have evidence, they have experience. That's
exactly right.
It's not theoretical. Right. It's like they know.
Yes. And so who, rightly, if you're teaching naturopathic medicine, would be design the curriculum and the clinical education
Yes.
would be elder naturopathic doctors.
Yes.
And when we had an elders group for several years who we met regularly, and one of the plans that we had was to have a, say, 8 elders who go to a college and say, we'll show you how to put this together. We will put you together a curriculum and a clinical curriculum
Yeah.
that will produce the real deal here.
Yes.
And that college, I would say, you know, if you have Jim Sensenig, Jared Zeff, Tish Dick,
Andre Sane, yourself,
Andre Sane, and right, it's like, who is
Dr.
not gonna go to
Cruzel,
that,
and these.
not going to go to that school, right?
Yeah.
With right? I mean,
Oh my gosh, it hurts. It hurts talking about this
yeah,
because
yeah.
because you know the profession is not just the colleges, but because there's others, but there's this thing called time and death, and as time passes, the elders die off. So you need to replace them with
Yep.
more elders. But if the colleges are not really teaching the medicine,
Right.
it does cause a serious problem. It causes a serious problem for the profession. However, I'm hopeful that healing can be perpetrated upon the colleges and on the profession. And if not, perhaps a split will occur in our profession, where you know the great division that's happening between different ideologies. I would say conventional medical ideologies and real naturopathic ideologies. I feel comfortable to say that it will result in a split in the profession, and maybe that's what needs to happen at some point. I don't know how that would come about, but maybe that's what needs to happen.
Yes, perhaps. And it depends on you and I and others to champion the truth that we know, and
Yes.
to speak our truth in this time. And if you ask me if I could raise a magic wand, that would be it. The magic wand would be, Moshe, you know, may you blossom in your understanding and your reasoned arguments, in your ability to teach and to persuade, and may you have the boldness necessary for these times to bring your voice forward into our profession.
Amen.
And
Amen.
yeah,
Thanks, Doc. Thanks. I would love
yeah.
to offer you the opportunity to share some closing wisdom. It could be wrapping up what we talked about. It could be another idea, anything that's on your heart and your mind that you'd like to share to the listeners as a kind of a wrap up of our discussion.
Well, there's one thing that I've had in my mind that I have wanted to speak. It may or may not be a wrap up. And it is this, that this is, I learned from Brett Weinstein, and who is an impeccable scientist, right? An impeccable scientist. So, and he says that, so I have 2 things. He says that that science is, you form a hypothesis, you test it out, you form a theory, you test it, you gather the evidence, and you see if your ideas stand. The essence and the most difficult aspect of science, and what requires, where the genius comes in, is in the forming of a hypothesis. Right?
Yeah.
What is bringing this about? I do this with my patients all the time. They write me and go, my cough returned, or I have a splitting headache or whatever it is, and I go, what's your hypothesis?
Yeah.
What is your, tell me your thinking about causation here.
Yeah.
What's taking place? And naturopathic medicine is, we have a model. It used to be called the model of toxemia, which is that its explanatory power has been for me the central model that I have, that I base my practicing on. I'll see if I can say it simply. It is that that the system becomes basically poisoned and fatigued. We could say poisoned, fatigued, and overstressed, but using the model of poisoning from the environment, from eating poorly, from taking medications, of poisoning, the body reaches, when it is poisoned, as these poisons accumulate, its method of ridding itself of poisons is sickness.
Right.
Right? It is acute sickness. That is, and we have 4 avenues of elimination. We have our respiratory tract, we have our urinary tract, we have our digestive tract, and we have our skin. And in an acute illness, our body gets a fever and sweats it out and coughs it out, and we have diarrheas and bowel movements and and stinging urine, and the body is getting rid of it.
Yeah.
If you block that self-healing mechanism and the body cannot detoxify and clear itself, what happens is the poisons stay in the body and you become ever more chronically ill until you have an illness that the body can't get rid of and it's sick all the time, like with cancer or arthritis or picket. So that model as a working hypothesis, its explanatory power, and I've said it very briefly, but I have seen it validated by science throughout the years, and that is one that hypothesis and the ability to form hypotheses, intelligent hypotheses about causation and about therapeutic regimens is at the core of being a physician. The other that, if I remember it here, let me think for a minute. What was the other one about, other than the hypotheses, that I
you wanted to close.
Wanted to speak to? Yeah.
Sure.
Well, it would be this. It's not what I was thinking of saying, but you remember I described that my work in working with behavior involved eating, movement, thinking, and relating.
Yes.
And so the essence of the healing work, what happens is that we all have habitual ways of eating, habitual ways of thinking, habitual postures, habitual ways we relate. And these habits end up poisoning us, weakening us, we get sick, and the illness is a message to us to change.
Yes.
We come, so in the hands of a naturopathic physician, they say that your arthritis is your body talking to you about the ways you eat and about the stress that you're under and so on. When we see this, we all face the formidable challenge of being bound by years of habit.
Yes.
Habitual eating, addiction, habitual patterns of self-criticism, of being anxious, of becoming angry.
Yes.
of being right in relationship. And being able to heal these deeply seated self-harming habits is the essence. If we don't stop the harm, if we don't first do no harm,
Right.
then the harm, whether it's smoking cigarettes or eating potato chips, continues cumulatively to damage us. The only solution to that is stopping the harm. In trying to stop the harm, it's the hardest thing in the world. We're being asked to master our own behavior, to
Yes.
master our own action.
Yes.
Nothing is harder than that.
That's right.
The essence of what this comes down to is exactly what you do, is exactly what I do, is that we, so we have this, let's say that what I'm facing is eating excess sweets, just to make it simple, okay? I'm addicted to sweets and sugar, and I'm obese, and I have heart disease. And so it comes down to getting control over my sweet tooth. The essence of being able to heal that part of myself that is addicted to sweets is being able to compassionately listen to myself.
Yeah.
Right? To not come in there and go, you stupid jerk, you need to stop this, but to listen to Charlie, who is tired and anxious and wants some ice cream, right? And will say he doesn't care if it's going to worsen his cancer. He wants ice cream.
Yeah.
And being able to have compassion for that part of ourselves, not marginalize it, not censor it, not label it and get it out of here, but to take that part of ourselves that we can't stand and we wish would go away and be able to listen compassionately and to allow him to speak his truth, right? And then to tell him the truth like a loving parent would do. This for us individually is the essential power. It is compassion for ourselves, right? And truthfulness. And compassion and truthfulness heal. Lindlar, our great philosopher, Henry Lindlar, said that the root causes of illness are ignorance and indifference and lack of self-control. Ignorance is, what are you ignorant of? But the only thing you can be ignorant of is the truth.
Yeah.
Right? We're ignorant of our own truth. We don't go ask ourselves, what are you afraid of? We don't have that conversation with ourselves, so fear runs us. So ignorance is one, lack of understanding of our own selves. The other one he calls indifference, which is lack of compassion, right?
Yeah.
Or lack of passion, if you would.
Right.
What do you really desire? How much do you desire help? Right? Tell me about your passion. Tell me about being sick of being sick. This is that combination of both understanding what to do. Okay, I see that I need to eat less sweets, and having a passion for eating less sweets, right? Not being different about, well, I can't really change, but building passion. Where does that come from? This is healing.
Yes.
Find the root. Where does that come from?
Yes.
Right? And that is written in disease. When you're faced, look, dude, you don't solve this, your weight's going to grow, your joints are going to grow worse, you're going to get sick, endlessly more sick, and die. So that is passion there that gives us passion in our lives.
Yes.
And in our profession, collectively, it's the same thing. The ability to be compassionate with one another, which you do so well, Moshe, and to be able to listen to another's truth and seek to understand them, and be able to speak our truth clearly so they can understand our truth. This is this is our path of how we will heal, and it's that I would wish for our profession.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much for those words. Very vital words, very wise. It's a pleasure, Dr. Cropley, you coming here represents a it's almost like it's like a coming full circle in a sense, but it's also really I feel a lot of gratitude for you being on with me and for sharing your wisdom and for being courageous. You know, you're quite aware of the cancel culture as it exists out there. You're taking a risk. You know, you're putting some skin in the game. I
Yeah,
have a lot of admiration for that and a lot of appreciation and gratitude. Thank you so much. I I hope maybe we could do it another time if it so falls, if the stars align and you feel like there's another topic or two we might delve into. That would be a real pleasure too.
let's do it, Moshe. It would be an honor.
All right, fantastic. All right, thanks a lot, Charlie. You
Thank you so much.
take
Okay,
care.
till next time. Bye bye.